Well, welcome to today's rant. This should be a much shorter one than yesterday. I kind of rambled a bit. That's what rants are for, I guess. To a large degree, they're a place for me to vent. And I've got a great audience. Gives me plenty of feedback. I really appreciate it. And but also, I have been kind of fasting from the news. I've been focused on trying to finish a book and but this thing with Russia and the Putin and Trump summit or meeting was very interesting to me. I'm still very excited about it. I just think really good things are going to come from it. All of the hysteria in the media only convinces me more that that is the case. This was something really good that is going to turn out really good. Now I think it's the first of many meetings. Hopefully, just like with Kim Jong-un, long ways to go to resolve that situation, and but it's begun. There's been an engagement. There was a proactive president who said, I'm going to meet with these people. I'm going to try to work these things out where we have major differences, and the meetings have begun. I think a lot has been learned already, and probably have more to be learned during every one of them. But again, let's talk about collusion. First, we need to understand a lot of things that our president has been accused of, or his people accused of, is not a violation of the law. It's just unseemly. Now, I'm not saying that the Russians didn't do things that were a violation, and whether it was cyber attacks or whatever else trying to influence our elections, that's another issue. But I'm saying we have people all the time that are trying to influence the elections of other countries. We say we don't want to meddle in other people's domestic affairs, but we do it all the time as a country. They do it, everybody does it. That's just the way it is now. Maybe this whole thing's going to result in countries letting other countries work out their own issues. And I think that whatever Russia was doing, I know it came out in the WikiLeaks leaks and through other things, that I think that Russia was very concerned that if Hillary got elected, we would end up in war together, war against each other. Maybe they were just, I don't know. I don't like to try to judge people's motives and everything. And I certainly think we need the utmost protection to our, electoral system. I think we have a far greater threat from what's going on inside the country than what others outside the country have been trying to do to us. The incredible election fraud that we've been suffering, many states are suffering. Overwhelming evidence to this effect. And then the resistance in our country to voter ID. That is the craziest thing in the world. The UN will not certify an election where there's no voter ID. And now you can have a lot of flexibility of what the ID is, but you can't go out and buy a pack of cigarettes without having an ID. You can't you can't buy alcohol, all kinds of things you can't do without an ID. It's easy for anyone to get an ID, and I think the resolution is help people that may be having trouble getting IDs, get them, but we have to have voter ID if we're going to have certifiable elections. That's just basic common sense, or you're going to have what's happening now. Busloads of people going from precinct to precinct to vote. And all that does is dilute the votes of every true American citizen. So we have to have that. But then there's collusion that I think really has put our national security at risk. How about the Uranium One deal that Hillary Clinton certified when she was Secretary of State? if there was any such thing as collusion with a foreign power in a way that endangered our national security, that had to be it. Where we sold, with Hillary Clinton's approval, with Obama's approval, we sold 20% of our uranium reserves to the Russians. Now, how crazy is that? Why isn't the media going nuts over that? Because it's obviously a political. Our media is no longer a true media. It is a political machine. It is a political force. And, we're not getting accurate things. How about the fake dossier? And how about, the source of that? There was collusion there. How about the hot mic with Obama talking to Medvedev, the Russian president, saying that, look, I can do a lot of things for you after the election. Just let me get through this election. Was that collusion or not? That was by an elected president. But collusion, we collude with states all the time to do things. We don't want them colluding to influence our elections. I get that. We really need to ensure that our elections are fair, free, and accurate. But I think the greatest threat there is domestically, not from any foreign power, including Russia. Okay, now the topic here is jailbreak. Let me just ask you one question. For all these people who are pushing socialism, which to me is madness, insanity, we have overwhelming historical evidence socialism does not work. The more socialist you become as a nation, the more ultimate problems you're going to have, that you've got to take increasing control over your people to maintain socialism. Now, I do personally believe there can be a difference between a liberal and a socialist. I think there can be a difference between a socialist and a communist. I think they all lead to the same conclusion ultimately if you follow their logical path where they're headed, but there are differences, and to some degree we're going to have some socialist elements in our government from now on. They're not going to go away, and some I think are good. But overall, look at the socialist states. I'm just saying, why did the Iron Curtain, why was that needed? We're seeking to build a fence to keep people out because so many want to come into our country. We can't handle it. We also, without being able to control who comes in, there are a lot of issues. We're letting a lot of really bad people slip through. We're letting all kinds of drugs. Drug problem right now is the basis for 80% of all U.S. crime. Most of that is related to what's coming across our borders. 80% of all U.S. crime. How much is that costing us? These are things that have to be fixed. But listen, there's a big difference when you have to have a fence to keep people out because so many people want to get in, as opposed to having a fence to keep people in because you're a prison, because your nation is a prison, and the only way you can keep your own citizens is by putting a fence up that they cannot get out through. And so why is that? Why does everybody want to get out of socialist states and get into ours, where there's liberty, where there's freedom, or a relative amount anyway? That should tell us one thing. And, why is it that the more socialist a country becomes, the more controlling and dominant it becomes? Now, how would you like it if you had no authority and could not choose what school you wanted to go to? That's necessary under socialism. And the more socialistic it is, the more necessary. They're going to dictate what school you go to, what job you have. where you live, things like that. These are all dictated under Marxism. They have to be. There's no other way they can keep it working for even as long as they do. And they can only keep it working until the other people's resources run out that they have consumed. And the reason why socialism can work in some small states is because they have natural resources or other things that can sustain it for them. And but very naturally, the more socialistic we become, the more it drains the resources of the nations. And then we have countries like Venezuela have some of the greatest resources on the planet. Should be one of the wealthy, and was one of the wealthy emerging countries in the world. A socialist government is elected. Look at it now. Everybody's trying to get out of Venezuela. And for a good reason. They just want to survive. It is decimated, absolutely devastated, that whole country. And socialism does not work. Marxism does not work. Never will work. But it is used to control people for those who want to have control over everyone and over increasing details of our life. And we've had that trend in our government, where every law that is made, we lose liberty. Every new regulation, we're losing liberties. And some are necessary, some are essential. They're basic ones that have to be there for everybody's security and safety, and for the country's security and safety. But what we've got to do is find the place where there's liberty, where we have the right laws that free us to play the game, just like, referees free the players in a sport to be able to play the game as long as everybody knows the rules and plays by them. But the worst thing that could happen to a game would be to have too many rules. That starts to shut the game down. Then it becomes more confusing. And then you don't know, is this the right strategy? And things are constantly changing, especially when you're constantly changing the rules on people. And some of what has been done by the previous administration, the Obama administration, they changed the rules for everybody right in the middle of the game. They didn't give them time. Now, Reagan did that too, so it's wasn't just the Obama administration. Reagan did it in a major way that impacted a whole major part of our economy. And I think had very bad consequences that had to later be dealt with. Good intentions, but they should have been phased in over a period of time. Say, this is going to be implemented in 2 years. Give everybody time to plan to make those changes. But when they're just being piled onto you, and you don't even have any reasonable sequence so that people can plan ahead for what's coming, that's very disturbing and upsetting to everybody, and that needs to be changed. And it needs to be changed the way we do things. I'm just saying. So how do we help people to become more free, but maintain the right balance of rules and regulations that provides everybody with a level, fair playing field? That's what we're seeking, is that right balance. So it says, where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's liberty. God made men to be free. That's why he put the tree of knowledge in the garden in the first place. There could be no true worship unless there was a freedom not to worship. There could be no true obedience unless there was the freedom not to obey. So, this is what we're seeing. I think our default needs to be to lean towards liberty and freedom for people. That is what prospers the people. That is what helps keeps the peace between nations. Anyway, that's my rant for today. Thank you for joining me.